Hi there, and welcome to the Alberta Update, a look at what's happening in your province. I am your host, Bruce McAllister. Thank you for joining us. Coming up on today's episode, the Minister of Affordability and Utilities will be here to chat with us about some changes that have been happening to lower the cost of living for you and your family. The Minister of Justice will join us to talk about the ultimatum that Alberta has issued to the federal government over its unconstitutional overreach. Much more ahead in terms of what the government has been doing. But first, as always, we say hello to the Premier to find out what's been on her busy schedule. Good day, Premier.
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, let's start with Ottawa. Surprise, surprise. Here we go again with them stepping into Alberta's jurisdiction. This time, it is the Federal Impact Assessment Act. You have a message for the Prime Minister and the federal government. What is it, and why is it so important for Albertans?
Well, they had to do a rewrite of this because they lost in court when they first brought through this bill. It's been called the No More Pipelines bill, but really what it did is it went much further than that. It actually took away our ability to approve projects within our own province for things like highways or power plants or even pipelines that were built 100% within our borders. So we said that's a major overreach. The court agreed with us, and they put in some cosmetic changes, but they didn't fix the problem. So we've basically done the work for them and said, if you want to fix this bill the way the court has described, here's what you need to do. And we went line by line, giving them the amendments, making it super easy, saying fix it or we're going to head back to court and we'll get another ruling to force you to abide by the Constitution. So they tried to pull a fast one, and we're just not going to let them.
I guess sadly, our lawyer friends are the ones making the money between these two governments. But your hands are tied in terms of you have to do something. Look, there have been a few other cases with the federal government where we've won in the courts recently. You think at some point they'd understand that?
Yeah, look at the federal court decision that came down around plastics. I mean, it was absolutely absurd for them to try to regulate plastics as a toxic substance. I mean, if you just look around your room and look at all of the different materials that are made from plastics, pens and computers, computer cases, iPhones, drinking bottles for water. When you look at all of the ways in which plastics are used for food safe products, for medical products, they've never had a leg to stand on. And the court said that's not only incorrect, but it is also a constitutional overreach. And of course, they're appealing it to the Supreme Court. So we're going to continue fighting that. I just wish that we had a partner in Confederation that would recognize jurisdictional boundaries, and when they're caught out by the court, abide by the decision and work with us to make sure that we pass laws that actually make sense and that are constitutional.
Yeah, well, speaking of not making sense, let's talk. Let's talk a bit about the carbon tax. The federal carbon tax still hasn't been shown, I don't think, to reduce any emissions. It is sure costing Canadians, though. You've recently been sharing the impact of this on some of the sectors in Alberta and how. And I want to repeat some of this before I ask you the question because it kind of brings it home for Albertans. So, hundreds of nurses and teachers could have been hired if the carbon tax weren't implemented. For instance, the cost of the carbon tax on healthcare, $73.6 million. That's 981 additional nurses. On education, $61.9 million. That's 495 teachers. Yet the federal government still doesn't see the value in axing the tax.
It's actually pretty remarkable when we looked at the numbers ourselves, because remember, they have a schedule where it's going to keep on increasing year after year on April the 1st. And so whether it's the extra cost because our electricity is generated largely by natural gas, or our heating, because most of our schools and hospitals would be heated by natural gas, or whether it's fleet vehicles. So you've got school buses that require gasoline or diesel to be able to power them, and same with fleet vehicles that you might have in the HS system with ambulances. So when you put all of that together, it's a really big number that they're paying. And by 2030, as you mentioned, you're talking about hundreds of nurses, hundreds of teachers. So what we're trying to say is this carbon tax has got to go. It's not achieving the objective that they intended. The most effective way to reduce emissions is the smart way that we're doing, by exporting our cleaner fuels and by using technology. But punishing our healthcare system, punishing our school system is not going to get any environmental benefit. It just causes a whole lot of pain and prevents us from being able to deliver the services that we need to. That's our message.
Your Minister of Municipal Affairs, Rick McIver, was happy to announce recently that municipalities are about to receive some more funding, some more infrastructure funding, which of
Fantastic.
course we know is badly needed. I think the number was 13%. Premier, 820 million next year, a 13% increase. It's pretty substantive to say the least.
Yeah, well, we've been asked by the municipalities for a long time to create a formula that allowed for them to go up and down when our revenues go up and down. So there's at least some predictability. Now, I think they're going to end up with a pretty nice stretch here for a while because we're looking like we're going to lead the country in job creation and economic growth till 2028. And so that means that when we have additional revenues, we pass on the same percentage increase. So we're going to see a 13% year over increase next year that allows them without any strings attached to use that money for whatever capital projects they have in their own community. As you know, there's additional funding that we give to municipalities to be able to upgrade highways and bridges in rural Alberta largely, but also upgrade roads and do LRT investments in our big cities. And so we have a combination where we give some of those big capital grants, but also we think it's important to make sure that there's some predictable funding so that municipalities can decide their own priorities.
Premier Daniel Smith on the Alberta update. Premier, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Well, as the Premier just alluded to and spoke to, Alberta continues its fight against bills introduced by the federal government that infringe on the rights and the jurisdiction of provinces to manage their affairs. With more on what Alberta is going to do to fight back, we have the Minister of Justice and Alberta's Attorney General, Mickey Amery, joining us. Minister Amery, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. I'm happy to be here.
Look, I know you heard what the Premier had to say. Why don't we start briefly with some of that? How about the ultimatum that we've issued to the federal government and over the Impact Assessment Act? Can you give us more detail on what we're dealing with here and how you're having to combat it?
Absolutely. First off, let's talk a little bit about the Impact Assessment Act. This has been coined the No More Pipelines Law, Trudeau's No More Pipelines Law. And it was the act that introduced a number of different rules for assessing the impacts of infrastructure projects, such as major pipelines all across Canada. Now, this act needlessly overhauled a review process that was already one of the best in the world. And it had the consequence of violating the Constitution in the process. It infringed needlessly on a number of industries in Alberta. It put jobs and investment at risk, and it created a large number of uncertainty by undermining the provincial government's right to maintain our own affairs. Last year, we went before the Supreme Court of Canada, and that decision ruled that the Impact Assessment Act was largely unconstitutional. The problem that we have today is that rather than simply accept the Supreme Court's decision and move on, the federal government has unsurprisingly simply decided to amend the IAA with inconsequential changes to try to get around the Supreme Court's ruling. The problem here is that these amendments do nothing to move the needle in a meaningful way and do nothing to change the very reasons that the Supreme Court articulated in that decision as to why it was constitutional to begin with. So we're right back at square one, and we've issued the ultimatum. We've said to the federal government, you've got 4 weeks, make the changes that we need to see, or we will be right back in court, and we plan to do that.
Look, I don't think Albertans are holding out hope that they're going to do that, but Minister, if you could make those changes, what would they be?
Well, there's any number of changes that we've asked the federal government to do. I went before a Senate committee myself to recommend changes. The Premier and Minister Schultz have been very vocal about this as well. We're asking the federal government to eliminate federal encroachment into provincial jurisdiction. We want them to recognize equivalency and the ability to substitute our provincial assessments for a federal impact assessment. We want them to create certainty for industry and increase investor confidence in our province by imposing concrete timelines and taking away ministerial discretion, federal ministerial discretion to decide what projects go forward and what projects do not. And that's a real problem for us. So there are any number of issues that we've been advocating for, and we'll continue to do that in order to make sure that any act doesn't impede upon this province's right to grow our economy and benefit all Albertans.
All right. So if they don't do this, and this is clearly a pattern, not just with Alberta, with other provinces, what are the next steps? How does it play out?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we've made it abundantly clear. We've said to them that if they don't make the changes that we need to see, we will go back to court. We've won twice in court in the past year, and if needed, we're going to go back and we're going to win again. Enough is enough. We've said that as clear as can be. We are calling on the federal government to stop playing politics, to stop catering to advocates, to stop attacking our economic drivers and our industry, and to stop driving away jobs that are hurting Canadians as a whole, to list or address the unconstitutional issues and the flaws in the amended Impact Assessment Act in order for us to proceed in a cooperative and a collaborative way. If they do not do that, I will make it absolutely equivocally clear. We will be back in court and we will win.
Okay, let's pivot a bit from that. Your government, your ministry is bringing forward some legislation in the upcoming sitting of the legislature to update the Alberta Bill of Rights. I guess what's the goal and what is the intent of the amendments that you're bringing forward?
Well, Bruce, look, the Bill of Rights has not been significantly amended since it was first introduced in 1972. And so we recognize that it's important to review and modernize it. This is an absolutely integral piece of legislation for our province. The Alberta Bill of Rights is the key and supreme act in our province that holds government accountable. The amended Bill of Rights, if passed, will ultimately strengthen property rights, which are really a cornerstone in our society, and will ensure that no Albertans can be deprived of any number of things that are inherently important to them.
Well, listen, a lot of people seem to be looking forward to it. I know you've been getting a ton of feedback on it, so it'll be an interesting session when you bring the bill forward. One more, and I'll let you go, Minister. We've seen lawful firearms owners become targets of the federal government. Can you talk a little bit about some of the amendments to the Bill of Rights, how it will impact lawful gun ownership in the province?
Absolutely, and I'm incredibly excited about the changes coming to the Alberta Bill of Rights. I can't talk about specifics because the bill has not yet been introduced in the legislature, but I will say that there is a process for us to debate this thoroughly within the Assembly, and that Albertans will hear several great arguments that we're advancing on their behalf. The focus of the amendments are to strengthen Albertans' individual rights, including the amendment to guarantee Albertans the right to acquire and use firearms in accordance with the law. Now, we know that lawful firearms owners are not the ones committing the crimes in this province. They're not committing the serious robberies. They're not committing the shootings. They're not committing the murders. We largely believe that the federal government has been imposing a number of different regulations that attack lawful firearm owners, and we just won't stand for it.
The Minister of Justice and Alberta's Attorney General, Mickey Amory, on the Alberta Update. Minister, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure.
All right, in other news today, two of Alberta's ministers provided testimony to the Parliament's Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development in relation to the wildfires that destroyed parts of Jasper this summer. Both Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis and Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen started by thanking the firefighters from across Canada, certainly from this province and the world, who came here to help with that effort to put those fires out or do the best they could. The ministers also made it clear that changes are needed to ensure the federal government develops better forest management practices within national parks and improved emergency response plans. They've also called on the federal government to step up and help with covering the costs to rebuild Jasper.
Of recent wildfires, Alberta's government has implemented a unified command approach with municipalities across the province through Bill 21. We believe this strategy should also extend to federally controlled lands to ensure a coordinated response in the future without delays. We are eager to lend our expertise in battling wildfires. It's clear that proactive forest management plays a critical role in safeguarding both our natural landscapes and the communities that depend on them. Alberta's approach to managing our forests exemplifies how dedicated attention to insect and disease management, carefully planned commercial harvesting, and prescribed burning and community fire guards can make a significant difference in reducing wildfires.
Alberta has approved a disaster recovery program with a budget of about $149 million to support Jasper's recovery. However, under the Federal Disaster Financial Assistance Arrangements, the DFAA, only a portion of Alberta's costs are eligible for reimbursement, and we certainly ask that the DFAA way, cost share formula be waived, given that this fire originated in the national park, which is federal jurisdiction.
Albertans living in rural and remote communities face unique challenges that require tailored supports and approaches to deliver safe, high quality, and sustainable healthcare services. That is why Alberta's government is launching a rural health action plan. This includes introducing a $16 million rural and remote family medicine resident physician bursary pilot project, an $800,000 medical first responder grant program, and a $600,000 emergency medical responder education grant program. It is a lot. The mayor of Hinton saying this is indeed a welcome step toward improving healthcare in rural and remote communities.
Today's announcement from Minister LaGrange brings us hope. This initiative is an exciting step in improving healthcare access in rural and remote municipalities just like ours. And we thank the provincial government for their commitment to taking swift and ongoing action to support and stabilize not only primary healthcare, but all healthcare in our communities.
A new compensation agreement for physicians, for resident physicians, has been reached, which will help to again retain and to restore more doctors throughout Alberta. This is a 4-year agreement. It will provide competitive and fair market compensation for physicians in training. This new deal will help stabilize and strengthen acute healthcare today by bringing in more medical students and ultimately more doctors to the province on the long term. The Professional Association of Resident Physicians in Alberta supports this agreement.
Resident physicians are the current fabric and future foundation of Alberta physicians' workforce. They are a vital component in maintaining physician numbers and serve as an essential and irreplaceable recruitment tool for bringing new doctors to the province. With this agreement, Alberta positions itself as an attractive destination for resident physicians across Canada. By enhancing comprehensive compensation, as well as training and working conditions, we are ensuring that Alberta continues to recruit and retain the brightest medical talent to serve our communities and contribute to meaningful healthcare reform.
Health Minister Adriana LaGrange recently testifying in front of the Senate Committee on Pharmacare. She reiterated the province's issues with the bill and how it will negatively impact Albertans. The minister making it clear that Alberta does not support federal schemes that violate provincial jurisdiction, offer fewer and outdated medications, and simply duplicate existing coverages and with no prior consultation with the provinces and with the territories.
Neither does it serve Albertans for the federal government to offer them fewer pharmaceuticals than they currently access under Alberta's more expansive formulary. For example, the federal diabetes medication list, which has been released to date, does not include some of the newer, more expensive drug therapies that align with current clinical practice guidelines, such as Ozempic and certain newer, more effective insulin options. Many of these prescription drugs are currently listed on Alberta's formulary. It is easy to foresee that exclusion of these newer therapies could result in affordability and equity concerns and risks for diabetes patients and our province.
Minister LaGrange adding that if Ottawa truly wants to make a positive impact on healthcare in this country, they should start providing increased healthcare funding to the provinces to enhance existing programs and healthcare initiatives. Affordability and utilities has been a big file for Albertans the past year. And that is because, of course, everything is getting more expensive. And the minister responsible has undertaken the modernization of Alberta's electricity system for the first time in over 2 decades. And the minister joins us now to talk about how all that is going. Before we get into that, we'll first say good day. Minister, I know you're in Toronto. How are things?
Things are great. We've had just a very successful and productive week, meeting with lots of stakeholders, lots of investors. They even did a tour of Darlington Nuclear Facility for just information to gather the potential future for Alberta.
Okay, well, look, you just hit on it, but these types of trips are important for you to stay on top of what's happening in the world, in the country, so that obviously we can provide the best services for Albertans.
Absolutely. Very, very important to make sure that we're staying in touch with some of the latest and greatest. We met with a series of investors from global investment firms all over North America. They were asking questions. They love Alberta as a market. They want to understand what's going along in our utility space. They really understand the rationale. They understand what we're trying to do, and very interested to hear about the potential for them to invest in Alberta again, and continuing some of those investments in Alberta.
All right. Speaking of investments and speaking of Alberta, we know our population has been booming. We talk about it to every minister in the government. It's a blessing and a challenge at the same time. People coming here for jobs, for new opportunities. There's a growing demand for electricity. So my question to you is, are we seeing investment keep up with the demand? Are there any new exciting projects on the go that you could tell us about?
Yeah, actually, we are seeing that. We're continuing to see growth in our generation and in our grid. We've brought a couple of new dispatchable generators online, Cascade Power and Suncor, hopefully by the end of the year. Two significant dispatchable units that will add to our baseload, making sure that we have surplus of dispatchability. So we should not face this winter what we faced last winter. We also continue to see growth in our renewables industry, a lot of growth there, as well as storage, battery storage, helping sort of bridge some of those peaks and valleys. So we are becoming more robust and more balanced. The work that we're doing on the market structure will also help put that responsibility on developers to help us grow a more balanced, sustainable, and affordable grid. We're excited with what we're seeing.
Well, look, more power generation we know will help lower the cost of electricity. That said, is there anything else that your government can be doing to help bring down the price of those utility bills?
Absolutely. We think a very key component of that is good long-term planning. So we prioritize the right projects in the right order for Albertans. And we can also place load. Now those are consumers of electricity. Data centers is often in the news. Those are large loads that can be anywhere from 50 megawatts to 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts. We put those in the right places of our system, and they will help bear the cost of the existing capital infrastructure and transmission, distribution, and upgraders, those kind of things. So that really significant planning and attraction of development investment in Alberta is really good news for everybody, including those who already live here and are paying a big fee right now on transmission distribution costs.
Okay, so you were the minister of both affordability and utilities. So let's pivot a little bit to affordability. Look, the cost of living is outrageous for Albertans, for Canadians, and I know inflation plays a big role in that, which of course falls at the feet of the federal government. That said, what else is your government doing, or what can you do to impact the cost of living to help Albertans on the affordability front?
Absolutely. That is the top of mind every single day for me, my ministry, my colleagues. I definitely our premier. The carbon tax, it can't go without saying that the carbon tax is the single largest contributor to that inflation, just driving costs up from everything we do, everything we eat, everything we drive, and everything that needs transport. So that's the number one thing that I'm very proud of our government and our premier standing up to Ottawa, making sure they know the very real everyday impacts. Beyond that, we're working on lowering the cost of utilities. We are working on making the market available for the largest number of housing starts in Alberta's history. That will hopefully bring the cost of housing down in the future. Working with the Minister of Finance, Nate Horner, on insurance and some great advancement there to bring insurance costs down. There's a lot of things that we're doing across the spectrum to make life more affordable. We continue to do that. We continue to fight for that. And we are seeing some great steps forward that'll come additionally this fall and into next year. I would like to say that electricity prices right now are hovering around 2 cents a kilowatt hour, a far sight from where they were at their peak last year in August. We continue to work on that to provide stability and long-term affordability for all Albertans.
One more, Minister, for you today. Something crossed my desk here this week, and I saw that Calgary is hosting a productivity summit. I think I saw next week, and I thought to myself, boy, that could cover a whole range of things. What is the productivity summit? What's it going to mean? How's it going to impact us here?
Right. I think it's incredibly important to have a conversation about it. Canada's productivity has really slipped in global rankings. I will say that Alberta has been number one in productivity in Canada for 9 out of the last 10 years. This year, we're second to Northwest Territories. I think that has something to do with their economy being strong and their small population because it's calculated per capita. But basically, it boils down to per person, how much are we producing? How are we innovating? How are we bringing new technology to bear? How are we doing things better so that each one of us contributing to the economy contributes more for the same or less dollars or for the same or less effort? It's about being smarter. It's about new technology. It's about advancement. It's about reinvestment and strategic investment by governments to make us more competitive on the global stage. I think this is something that Albertans and Calgarians are excited to hear about, and I'm proud of a government that's hosting this conversation for the betterment of our people.
You bet. Healthy competition is never a bad thing. Good to hear. Listen, thanks for all you do. Appreciate you taking some time from down there in TO to join us.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate all that you do, and this is a great way to get information out to Albertans. Thank you.
All right, and I will pay you the $20 I owe you for saying that, Minister, when you come back to Calgary. The Minister of Affordability and Utilities, that is Nathan Newdorf, joining us. Well, Alberta's government is making strides to repair and improve government-owned affordable housing units to ensure they are safe and available now and into the future. Through Budget 2024, a government is investing nearly $121 million, that's over 3 years, to maintain and to repair government-owned and supported housing units across the province, supporting approximately 4,250 units in 2024-2025. This funding going towards things like replacing windows, repairing roofs, and improving interior to help ensure they continue to be used for years to come. Tourism in Alberta is booming. With more visitors coming to the province than ever before, we've had the Minister of Tourism and Sport, Joseph Scow, here on the update to talk about that. Indigenous tourism is key to this growth, with 1 in 3 international travelers seeking authentic Indigenous experiences. Indigenous entrepreneurs across Alberta are capitalizing on funding that's offered by Alberta's government to provide travelers with unique opportunities to discover Alberta and its history.
It has incredible economic and social benefits to Indigenous peoples and communities. It supports Indigenous culture, traditions, families. It engages youth and elders, revitalizes language, and celebrates Indigenous culture through the voices of the original peoples of these territories.
Speaking of tourism, Alberta's tourism industry broke records last year, injecting $12.7 billion with a B dollars into Alberta's economy. That is through visitor spending, thanks to Alberta's tourism strategy and ongoing efforts to partner with businesses and stakeholders. We are well on our way to the government's goal of growing Alberta's visitor economy to $25 billion. That is by the year 2035.
I'm Joseph Scow, Alberta's Minister of Tourism and Sport. I'm here to share some exciting news that Alberta's vibrant tourism sector reached new heights last year, both in tourism spending and visitation. In 2023, visitors spent $12.7 billion in Alberta, setting a new record. This is a 19% increase from 2022's record-setting numbers. We're seeing more spending from international visitors than ever before, as people from around the world come to experience Canada's wild side. It's clear the world wants more Alberta. And as Albertans, we know that our province has so much to offer visitors from near and far. Alberta's government has worked hard to support the incredible people who work in our tourism sector. Destinations and experiences throughout the province hold so much potential, from rural and agritourism to globally connected cities to world-famous festivals to the diversity of cultures that we share through Indigenous tourism. The tourism sector's growth benefits people in all corners of the province, opening new doors for businesses and creating jobs in our communities. Because tourism means jobs. These outstanding results show that our approach to growing Alberta's tourism sector is working, and this wouldn't be possible without the hard work of Travel Alberta in developing new experiences and partnerships with tourism businesses and entrepreneurs, working with airlines to increase direct access to our province, and promoting our incredible destinations to travelers from around the globe. Our best days are ahead of us, and I'm confident we'll reach our ambitious goal of growing Alberta's visitor economy to $25 billion a year by 2035. And we'll keep showing the rest of the world what we as Albertans already know, that our province of Alberta is the best place to live, to play, and to visit.
Well, that does it for another episode of the Alberta Update, a look at what's happening in your province. Pleased to have Ministers Nathan Neudorf and Mickey Amory on the show, as well as the Premier today. We will continue to do these updates every couple of weeks until the legislature reconvenes, and we'll do them every week. A reminder, you can find us on YouTube. Go to the Alberta Government YouTube page or the Premier's at AB Danielle Smith, and share them on the socials. You'll also find the program there on most of the social media sites. And we thank you again for your time today, and we'll see you again next time.